had an uncle that was a miner, and I remember standing in Glenview Road with him, and he pointed towards Clent and said, "That's where I went to work, underground as far as Clent." And it was a long time before I could grasp that as a concept. They went down the mine in Beech Street, or Foxwood Colliery as it was then, and walked to Clent before they started work.
I went down the mine. We went right to the coal face at the bottom of Dangerous Hill, and that piece of coal I piked out with the pike myself. And everywhere I go, that bit of coal goes with me.
It was sunk in 1874 by Joseph Adcroft. His initials was on the stack, about 7 bands up the stack. And it didn't prove to be a very friable working, so it closed down. And it said that somebody paid the engine man to drop him down to see what the quality of the coal was. The coal at the shaft bottom was fairly poor, but the top coal, which is a few yards up the shaft, was 7 foot thick and quite good quality coal.
The mine was started at one time and then left for some reason, and then they had to go back years later and start it off again.
We didn't start work until after the 1921 strike, when most of the other collieries had shut down.
We used to pass that all the time when we walked over the fields, you know, and the big wheels like that, looking at them. I can see them now, the twin wheels, you know.
On a nature study walk from Colliery Lane Primary School years ago, when we walked past the Beech Street Colliery, and the miners was just a-coming up, and I stood in awe as the wheels was going round, and these chaps, blacker than the ace of spades, was walking across the yard. And I thought, that's the job for me. And I never thought of anything else, only getting a job at the Beech Street when I left school.
When I left school in 1953, a lot of the chaps from school went down there. My schoolmates went down the Beech Street.
Collier I wanted to be. Not a chain maker, a collier.
I left school when I was 15. I'd done my training for Beech Street Colliery.
14 3/4. The employment officer sent me, Sammy Sewell, Morris Adamson and Kelvin Harrington up to the mine, and he come walking across the yard, he's a Geordie fella, and he had me in the office. He said, "Oh, you want to be pitman?" He says, "Come up when you leave school Christmas and I'll set you on." Which we did do, and that first week, which was 3 days before Christmas and the holiday pay, it was probably the best week's wages I had till I was about 17, because I had an adult's holiday pay.
I went down the pit at 16. I done about 7 years down the pit.
The first time I went down the mine, which is in February, when they sent us training at Ensford at Cannock, and it was the Valley training pit. Oh, I was overawed. It was everything I dreamed of. The ideal job for me, just what I wanted. Oh, believe it. Even now I could start tomorrow.
It was at Hilton, Maine, when I was training, and it was gas. It was steam engine, and as soon as you left the top, you're all covering your mouth, and you was at the bottom before you was aware on it.
I worked about 4 weeks on the bank, where they taught you how to behave and to carry yourself and do little jobs, you know.
It was a hard job.
Beech Street Colliery was it was always a family affair there, really. I mean, it was a very safe mine to work down there.
You enjoyed it. You enjoyed your work. Know what I mean? It was dirty and what's the name, but somebody had got to do it.
Only being barely 15, it was very difficult for me to lift the empty tub on, let a full one. But after 2 or 3 weeks, I could do it like the old ones, you know, because the neck to it, with putting your foot on him, weighing on it, and I was quite accomplished by that time, you know.
The tubs was that height, and you got about that height, and you got to be on your hands and knees loading up. You couldn't stand up and load up. You got to be on your hands and on your knees.
It was very old-fashioned pit, the Beech tree was. It was pony drawn.
The roads used to be about 8, 9 foot wide. That's the single line.
They call them roads. The roadways down the mine.
Then they made the main rip. That was the main where they was to put all the tubs on the dual carriageway. Like they made it like a double. We used to have to strip the small roads into one big road, so as they could get the horses down, and there was still be all horses then, and then you got to tram the tubs out, pushing them.
Trammed. We had a better rate of pay, tramming that was pushing, because tramming up north was a different job definition. It meant load the coal as well as push it. So they was paying us a tramming wage, not very much, mind, but it was a bit better than a day work below.
Then they brought the horses down. And
Sammy, that was. Sam, he come from a colliery, Cloudstop. He'd been in an accident, he got a bad hip, but he was a lovely little pony. And when he came up the pit in 1958, in spring 58, I went up and took a photo of him. Lovely thing he was. He got killed a few weeks after at Hampstead. The workings at the Beech tree was all free, all gravitate. They could loose a tub at the face and it would more or less come to the bottom on its own. So we used to come out on the top sometimes if we worked over.
I worked up at the pits, Fosker pits, and I worked there for several years, helping in the canteen.
Mrs. Arlene's sister's son, she worked up there, and he had the measles. She says, "Will you go and do my job?" I said, "Well, I don't know, I've never been up, and you can't just walk in." So I had to go up and see the manager, Mr. Bradley. He said, "Oh yes, oh lovely, we'd love to have you." So I went, and then we decided she'd do one week and I'd do the other.
There was a proper canteen there, apart from the pit, and we used to do the dinners and do the sandwiches for them to go down the pit.
You know, I used to hear the colliers come up in the afternoon and say, I'd say, "Oh, where's so-and-so today? Oh, he's working a bit late today and he's down so-and-so street." And I couldn't imagine why they called so-and-so street. And I thought, well, must be just I don't know. But anyway, I said to Mr. Brettle, "Well, where's all these streets? How does it go?" He said, "Would you like to go down?" I said, "Yes." And he looked at me, he was staggered. He didn't thought I was going to say no.
I went down the pit myself.
They put cushions in the trucks, you know. And he said to the engine driver, "Please take these ladies down very slowly."
I thought it was lovely. Everybody ought to have gone down the pit. The manager took us down one Sunday morning.
We got our helmets on and lights, you know, and our lamps. Oh, when we got in the cage, bosh, down we went. And it's a good job we'd got blooming knickers on. Our clothes went all up here, you know.
We walked nearly as far as Clint.
But it was beautiful. And where the ponies were, you never saw anything like it. All painted white, and they were lovely.
Lovely, but hard graft.
And it was like a main road and streets going off, you see. And on the trucks, we went right under to the bottom of Dangerous Hill on the trucks.
we used to go in and I started smelling. It's gas, stale, fire damp. It's like gas. If you went in an entrance without it, you'd curl over.
They never had lamps until the government took over in 1947, and all government mines at that time had to have safety lamps and electric battery lamps.
The doggy was to take a tiller lamp down, light the tiller lamp if the burner went a certain colour. He wouldn't let me go no further.
This particular one belonged to Len Southall. It's a he was a deputy, and it's a self-lighter. If it went out, he could relight it, whereas the standard miner's lamp, what the colliers took in for testing for gas, if they went out, they weren't relightable. At the time when I worked there, but they improved on that. You could take it to the cabin, and there was electrically lit by just touching one part of the lamp, and it caused a circuit across the wick and it lit again. Being an ex-miner, I've seen loads of these hats for sale, but never to fit anybody. Because in the days when these was about, young lads 14 worked down the mine.
There was a thunderstorm. It was a nasty night when we went down. And we had a phone call. We phoned up the ganger, the doggy. He phoned up and what's happening? I phoned back and says we had a thunderstorm. It took all the electrics and everything. We got no air, nothing, no lights or nothing down the pit, just we lights on my hats. And we all had to come into the bottom of the pit. We were stuck down here. The police was on top, ambulances and one miss or another, just in case something did happen. They've got airflow, air ducts going through the pit to air, you know, keep the air going through the pit. But without that, it gets really hot. We got out the next morning. It'd be about 8 o'clock. About 8 o'clock the next morning when the electric was put back on and everything. It was frightening. It's really hot.
Made of oak, but it's just look until it was hollow. It's a deputy stick. It's also a measure. So for measuring the day work, and they used it to poke the roof, and poke and point and things like that. You know what I mean? All deputies had one.
The old Oldnall pit incline, which went from Oldnall down to the Hayes.
There's a building there, Dry White Park Lane. There was a steam engine in there at one time. They used to lower an empty coal truck down and hook the other coal trucks up and pull them up the incline. It was what they call a direct engine.
They didn't move very quickly, and as they were on an endless belt, providing none of the men's supervisors could see you, you could get a ride. I mean, you either had to ride on top of the coal, which went down, or try and get into an empty truck coming up.
Where the McDonald's stall is now down in Cradley, there used to be like it was, I can't remember, it was like a mud bank of some description.
The wet bank, which is down Park Lane.
And it was all hand-picked by women, that was, and he had to open and pick that, and it came out the pits. And it was like a soggy grey clay.
You know, Caslan Wood, that was some rough old ground there, the back of the baths, and they spent a bit of money on that, levelling it off, and that was to store the coal. They were going to mine that much coal with all this new equipment they'd got during the summer months to use up during the winter months. For such a small pit, there was a drawing about 11,000 tonne a week, with 100 blokes, which is about 130 blokes, as we imagine, below ground. It was pretty good, that was, you know.
When the colliers used to come up on a morning, about 6:45, they'd got their clogs on, you know, call them clogs, and it was just one bum, bum, bum. And then 3:30 they'd come back. You could tell the time. I mean, and very often you'd say, well, it isn't all that late yet, the colliers haven't come down. You always knew the time by the colliers. Well, when they built these showers, they used to go over and used to walk down like gentlemen. And of course it was never the same after.
of a night time, I used to go to the gable end and start the water pumps up to pump the water away. It was terrible, terrifying. The gable ends was about a yard high, and you could be on your knees scrambling through to get to the pump to start it up, and it did go through your mind, is that going to be narrow when I come back? Am I going to get out when I come back? And it was frightening at times.
Very old-fashioned pit up until about February 58, and they decided to spend a lot of money on it. Like the roadways all altered for conveyor belts, and the face lengthened. The face was advancing all the time. The old-fashioned way, if you cut a cauliflower in half, you got the central stem with the side shoots are going off. It was like that, in so much it's gradually getting bigger. And they straightened the face up, brought the ends round, and got it to go to about 200 yards long, like I told you. And they cut it, cut the one side of the face one day, and the other side of the face another day. And the conditions got such they couldn't pack the roof, because the material that fell from the roof was too hard to break, and it all came in one Friday and flooded it, and everything was lost. It was all sunk down. All the airways was closed.
It closed down. I was made redundant. Of course, I was going to travel to Ilton, Maine and Baggery.
They shut it. They never got no farther in the face as it closed it.